Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Conversation Show powered by the Emerging India Forum, TIF, and our tech partner, Prime Infotech Solution. Series is Tri Shakti, theme is Beyond the Headlines, the Power of Truth. We are at Pure Sin, and we have with us guest speaker Raksha Kumar, a distinguished multimedia journalist and Fulbright scholar. Raksha's work spans across human rights, conflict reportage, civil liberties, and social justice. With bylines in prestigious publications such as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, BBC, and The Guardian, she has reported from 12 countries, bringing critical stories to the forefront. So, welcome Raksha to today's special
Thank
episode
you.
of the Coffee Conference Show, and it will be an interesting conversation looking at your experience.
Thank you. Hopefully, yeah. Let's hope so.
So, friends, this is Lion Amir Virani, host at Coffee Conversation and a legal tech evangelist at Prime Infotech Solution. So, just wanted to explain you, Raksha, the format. We have got 3 rounds. You were aware about the 2 round, the professional, personal, and the rapid fire.
Yeah,
So your answers have to be funny, witty, quickly. So you get to win this ebook.
that is so much pressure.
So my first question in your professional journey round: can you describe your journey in journalism and what initially drew you to this profession?
I'll tell you what drew me into this profession. I was a very curious student
Mm-hmm.
in high school. I wanted to know everything. I liked all subjects. I was curious and inquisitive about most things. And by the end of your high school, there is like this unintended pressure that is created on you where people start asking you, so what do you think you want to do in life, and where do you see yourself in what profession, which career. And I was looking for a career where which would give me the freedom to do everything. So if you're interested in economics, you should be able to do it. If you're interested in sociology, you should be able to do it. If you're interested in psychology, politics, and that is what actually drew me into the profession, because I thought here is one profession that will let me ask questions about everything that's around me. It'll let me go into the depths of whatever issue I choose, and if I can do a good job, then I can survive in the profession long enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it started. So I was 16 and I told my father, this is what I want to do, and he said sure. There wasn't a single journalist in our family. Nobody really knew what it means.
Okay.
Um, we just, you know, it was just one of those things.
Wow. So continuing, what made you attracted to go into multimedia journalism, and what are the work roles of a multimedia journalist?
So there is no, I mean, I started out as a journalist in the sense that I started out like everybody else did. In fact, my first job was with NDTV. And that was essentially video. At that point, we didn't pay much attention to the digital platform. We did, in the sense that ndtv.com was still a very famous thing, but we kept it separate from television. And so that's how I started out. So I don't know if you really the time when I started out in the 2000s, I don't know if people really wanted to do multimedia journalism. I'm not even sure if that term was coined back then. It's a pretty new, recent addition to the whole thing. What would really be, I guess, important is for you to be able to understand the story, first of all, and then understand the medium. Because, as the name suggests, it's multimedia, right? So, if you are telling a story, let's say, purely with audio, so there are no visuals,
Mhm.
you should be able to understand what the story is and understand what the medium offers. So you're only playing with sounds, and you're only playing with interviews, and you're playing with good narrative skills, etc. Let's say you're doing like a photo feature, and it's like a long series of photographs. Now these are still images. So for you to be able to understand the medium, where you say, okay, I am only going to shoot still images, there is no video in this.
So, Raksha, how is your journey been like working on a most challenging story? Uh, what aspects do you keep in mind, and how do you give justice?
Wow. First of all, I feel like we don't give justice. There is no giving justice part there. But so again, when you say most challenging question, sorry, story, it's very difficult really to categorize one story as most challenging. I've done extremely deeply researched stories which haven't been challenging. They've just been a lot of work. But then there have also been stories which on the face of it look very simple, but they've been extremely challenging. So I'll give you this example. I'll give you examples for both, and then
Hmm.
you'll understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
um, so I work very deeply with land rights. So the question of who should own land, right? Like
Mhm.
where, who owns land and what happens because of land ownership patterns. And then everything else stems from that. What stems from that could be gender relations, caste relations, class. I mean, there are like a whole gamut of issues that revolve around land. And so most of these stories that I do involve months of research and then a lot of like trying to get to know your characters, basically being there present in their lives, trying to kind of figure out how do you tell this story and all of that. But some of these stories have not been challenging, they've just been like a lot of hard work. But something, I did a story last year about a rap artist here in Mumbai, which was
Mhm.
a pretty straightforward story. So you go to this girl, she's a young girl, she's 16 years old, she goes to school, she goes to college like everybody else. But she does, her rap songs are deeply political. Her rap songs have these, they question a lot of the established norms of societies. She comes from a Muslim community. In fact, she comes from a place which is wherein, and her socioeconomic background is way down the ladder. I did not realize that interviewing her would be so challenging because, you know, while I was entering her community in Mumbai, I was stopped by various people who really didn't want her to do rap because they felt it went against their religion.
Hmm.
So there are stories that appear to be very straightforward on paper, uh, but they don't end up being like that. And then there are stories which are like, let's look at the history of land legislations in Bihar and see where the current generation is situated within that. And then that actually is just a part of your job. You need to do research, you need to fact check, you need to write. Well, sure.
So, like taking this example of this Muslim female rapper, there must be several other cases of ethical dilemmas which must be coming up during this kind of uh, journalism, doing research, shoots, everything. So, how do you overcome facing such difficulties or challenges and keeping in Quebec, there is all things are being covered, their lives, your creative interest, everything.
Yeah, I mean, ethical dilemmas are dime a dozen. Like every time you step out into the field, you're facing with certain ethical dilemmas. First, one of the main ones is, who are you telling the story for? So it is obviously catering to an audience, but then your sources are also an important part of your story. So there is no way you will be able to. I mean, you shouldn't basically tilt it in the favor of one or the other. Like your responsibility towards your sources as important as your responsibility towards the audience. So there are like a whole list of ethical dilemmas that we face. Also because of the subjects really that I'm looking at, right? Like these are subjects that do not have a straightforward answer. Like these are
Hmm.
questions which are constantly raised by many people all over, and people answer it according to what suits their narrative and their perspective. So it's always a balance that one needs to have. I don't really know how better to answer that question without giving you an example, but essentially I would say for anybody who wants to do journalism at the moment, especially with subjects that are very I guess emotionally draining, like social justice, for instance. First of all, what would really help is if you understand the story as clearly as you can, and then set about doing your work the way you would, in a relatively dispassionate and as balanced way as you possibly can.
So my next question,
Did I just answer that? Did I see through it?
little bit. My next question is, कि भाई, you're working with uh, emotions and people. So how do you keep yourself centered and balanced? You don't get influenced because people may be telling you stories and you get swayed, maybe
Yeah.
using you to. They have their own agendas. So
Yeah.
how do you do your research and keep yourself not being ये कि भाई, go to their side and get carried away and you get harmed?
Yeah, I mean, so there are two parts the way I understand the question. So, one is how do you keep centered and rooted in the face of stories that are very emotionally draining. So, let's say you are reporting from a flood zone and you can, see houses being washed away and people and cattle, and it's a really tough story to report on. How do you keep yourself emotionally kind of grounded at the moment? I feel like over a period of time, it's not easy at the beginning, it really isn't. And over a period of time, you begin to kind of compartmentalize these things in your head. And you say there is this part of the story that you want to be invested in, and then this part of the story where you completely disconnect yourself from it and take yourself out of it when you go home. It's got you should not carry work back home. So that's, I felt like, is one aspect of the question. The other aspect is how do you ensure that you're not used by people who you're talking to. Again, it kind of goes back to the central point I was trying to make, which is how do you understand the story? Like, do you have a good grip of what the story is? And this comes by a lot of research, a lot of pre-interviews, like stuff you just do by talking to people on the phone and getting an understanding of what they have to say. So how well and how clearly do you know the story will determine how you will stand your ground and not let other people use you for their purposes.
Very true. I I'm very fond of this movie, Blood Diamond,
Yeah,
Leo.
I'd seen it a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you see yourself relating to that reporter who was with Leo and he lost his life, but she went, covered the story of that native person and gave him the justice?
Oh my god, I don't so I don't do I mean, first of all, I feel like there are so many stories that have been set in India which are similar. And yeah, in a way I do relate to the fact that there are Indian journalists who work with or collaborate with foreign journalists for specific stories. So that I definitely, kind of, there is resonance, I guess. But the fact is that the nature of the media is changing very rapidly. So now this whole collaboration is, very few people are collaborating these days, and very few people really have the I guess the humility to consult with local journalists other than for translations. Like, a lot of people come to me, if they want research, translation, things like that. But then there are very few people who would take a local journalist's input on stories, on issues. It's a that's a different like a you're talking about equal contributions and equal collaborations, like you mentioned in the movie. You just because you come from a particular part of the world which does more international news than we do. So, for instance, India it barely does any international news. What I mean by that is you don't have Indian journalists going to a foreign country to report for an Indian audience. Very little of that happens. Very little. Like you can pick and choose stories. The last was, I think, Ukraine war. Nobody really bothered to go to Gaza. So I'm saying this is a very Western thing where you have their correspondents all over the world trying to report stories for their audiences. So you'll have a French journalist who'll come to India and not just do foreign policy stories, but then like go into Dharavi and talk about what this settlement means. And that the opposite is not true. Indian journalists don't do that, and that the various reasons for that. There's no funding, there's no interest, there's no expertise. I mean, there are and then they're working under pressures that are innumerable. I mean, there are various reasons for that.
Okay.
So yeah, the resonance bit is it comes up to the point that you are working in collaboration with a foreign journalist who wants to report on your country to his or her audience back home.
So I'm a little curious. Okay, how is Indian media houses uh, are more towards your kind of journalism?
Indian media houses, um, so it's a mixed bag. There are so I only work in the English language, which is a huge limitation for me. If I could work in other languages, the media spectrum would have opened up for me. But in the English language in India, you will see that there are very few publications. So, and amongst those, when you pitch a story, they will not say no. They're interested, they want to be able to publish it. They'll devote their resources, editors, etc., photographs, do a good job of it. The problem is they don't have the means to fund a reporting like this. So then you're relying on grants, and you're relying on fellowships, and you're relying on what other ways and means of raising money can be. There are very few Indian publications that take sponsors for a story. So let's say if you're doing a video series and you need somebody to be able to fund that entire series, well, then you probably go to a sponsor. So I remember there was a Save the Tiger campaign that the Indian government had and NDTV had. The NDTV basically got them to sponsor our. It was called some green initiative or some such. So you would have some kind of funding arrangement like this, but otherwise Indian media basically does not have the money or the resources to invest into stories which are longer form, deeply researched, and have a social justice angle.
Okay. My next question will be, Raksha, what got you attracted in human rights and social justice journalism?
What? Well, I think it was a pretty, like I said, it was a pretty I think it was a straightforward option in the sense that, so just to kind of recap, like I had said, when you asked me what got me into journalism, you know, since I was a very curious student, and I always wanted to ask questions about everything, know about all the issues, just be able to have this sense of, I want to now understand this issue from this perspective and this lens. I thought human rights is as broad as that, right? Like it's a very broad umbrella, and you can fit many things in that umbrella. And so it was a very obvious choice for me. I don't think it was like a considered decision where one day, I sat at a table and said, okay, now I have 5 options. Which one am I going to pick? Honestly, there is nothing called human rights journalism either. Like you just go reporting on issues that matter to people, that fall under that like massive umbrella of social justice, and then you're just calling yourself a human rights journalist. So it's a, you know, what interests you and what you think needs to be done at what point of time.
Wow. So let's recap. You have done so many stories. So which story has been very dear to you?
I think all of the stories that I've done have been very dear to me. Like there's a lot of sweat and blood, like literally sweat and blood that have gone into these stories. So it's very hard to pick one. Like I mean, you know, if you I don't know, like if you were to talk to, you know, an artist and say which one of your creations is your best, it's like there have been stories which have stood out. There have been stories which have won awards, and those are nice because, you know, it's always nice to get an external validation, and very nice to kind of have other people say to you that it's a good story. But if you ask me, I feel like I like all my stories equally.
Yes, that is true. In your creative work, you can't choose.
Yeah, also because when you're doing that story, you're completely invested in it.
Mhm.
And since the time that I've begun to freelance, which is, you know, 12, 13 years ago, I'm constantly doing 3 stories, 4 stories at the same time. So there are these, you know, like either they are smaller stories or they're longer term projects, which means there are a series of stories. And at that point, I'm completely invested in those stories. So if you look at it in like the broader, like a life spectrum, you know, I've given all of these stories so much of my uh, you know, emotional and time investment, that it's very difficult for me to say, oh my god, this didn't work out, or, you know. And then as a freelance journalist, you don't have that luxury that a staff journalist would. Like a staff person can tell you, I worked on this story for a month, it didn't work out, I'm moving on. I don't have that luxury because this is literally my bread and butter, so I've got to make it work.
Yes. Now, working with New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, how has experience been working with an international publication?
So I freelanced for all of them. It's always been in the capacity of a freelance journalist. It's always been in the capacity of a reporter, so a freelance reporter. Many times, what has happened with and these are, I'm guessing these are just examples you picked,
Hmm.
um, because it's a wide range. So I've worked with like bigger publications like the New York Times and the Guardian, and then really smaller or relatively smaller publications like Truth Dig. And these are, you know, the experience is, it spans a spectrum. With the bigger publications like NPR, for instance, there is a great deal of learning that happens. Touchwood, I have been extremely fortunate to work with editors, even journalists I've collaborated with, who've been very talented, who know what they're doing. You know, their ethics are very like well grounded. Um, and when it comes to smaller publications where I have got to take on a lead role, which means that, you know, they don't have the kind of support that a New York Times can lend you. And even then, I think you get, there is like a learning curve. So in a way, I think I've gotten the best of both worlds as a freelance person. Like if I were working with one big organization, I think my experience would have been limited.
Yes. So now, from the world, uh, who's been your mentor, influencer from social journalism?
Who have I been influenced by? Incidentally, a whole host of women. They've been like I can list, you know, a lot. Like I can give you a long list of women who've been editors, who've been mentors, who've you know, ensured that I do the job the way it should be done. But who I get really influenced by are journalists I collaborate with when I work on the ground. So every time I, let's say, you know, have to go to like a village which is some 500 kilometers inside the state capital in any of the capitals. And especially if it is in the southern states or Maharashtra or Gujarat, like these are places where I don't have the benefit of speaking the local language, and I'm forced to collaborate with a local journalist. And those local journalists actually are the ones who are extremely, inspirational. I mean, I reported from Gadchiroli, and I was collaborating with a Marathi journalist, young Marathi journalist, straight out of college, and she was this feisty young woman who took me places. Who, not just she was basically supposed to be the translator. She ended up kind of giving me a whole new perspective on the story that I was doing, and taking me to meet with sources that I would have otherwise never met. Like, these are, I think, all the women that I otherwise collaborate with on each of these stories are extremely inspirational. Assam, again, like, I don't speak the local language, so I need somebody from Assam who can, who would take me. And that was the first time I did a story from Assam was the first time I was visiting Assam. Like, I'd never been to that place before, so they kind of really inspire and help me through the story. So I feel like these are the women who, keep the career going.
Yes, very interesting. So my next question will be, Raksha, what impact do you hope your journalism has on Indian society?
I think, I mean, so I feel like the only reason I get out of, so let's put it this way: journalism does not have money. You cannot feed your family if you are a journalist. As in, when I say if you're a journalist, as in a journalist who's an old school journalist, going by the book, is not necessarily an influencer, doesn't necessarily do television anymore. So if you're doing longer form, in-depth stories as a journalist, there is no way you'll be able to pay your rent. So there is no money. The kind of influence that we used to wield as journalists, where you would walk into a room, a restaurant, walk into a police station, a lawyer's office, sub registrar's office, collector's office. The kind of influence you wielded when you walked into these places and then you said you were a member of the press, you don't wield anymore. So there are two things that are straight out of the window. So there's no money, there's no influence. So then the third thing is, what is it that you're working for? And you're essentially working, hoping that whatever you're doing is creating some impact somewhere. And it's so difficult to quantify impact, especially now, because it is a period where there is an information overload. So let's say, in as a part of this conversation, let's say you do a YouTube shorts, and it is shared by like 200 people. You have no idea how that has impacted the 88th person who saw it, and maybe the other 199 people had no impact when they watched it. So it's really difficult to quantify. There used to be a time when you had 3 newspapers, national level newspapers. Somebody read your article, and then a politician called you up and said, how dare you write what you wrote. So you knew that the impact was pretty like measurable. With social media, with this multiple like avenues for information, there is no way you can measure impact. Very few. Like, I know that a couple of my stories got awards because of the impact that they had on the ground. So, like a policy change, again, this happens, like, I think, once in a new moon, where you're where, like, 10 years of work will suddenly, somebody will say, oh, but I understand that this is a problem, so let's change this law, this policy, let's see what the community says about this. But that, you don't it doesn't happen every day.
Very true, very true. So my next question will be, what advice would you give to aspiring journalists who want to focus on social journalism?
Do it. I'd say do it. Like, there are very few people who want to do it. you might as well just do it. You need to know the issues. So I think this goes back to a bit of journalism education. And what I mean by that is did um, I did my undergraduate degree in journalism, and all 3 years we weren't necessarily taught how to write a story, how to film a story, like how do you take a shot. Like these are ancillary things that you learn on the job. What we were taught back then is how do you frame a story? Like what is it? Whose perspective is it? Who benefits from it? Who should benefit from it? These are like critical thinking tools and deeper questions that you're taught at an undergraduate level, which unfortunately now doesn't happen anymore, or happens very rarely, I guess. So I feel like that is what is crucial. So multimedia, like we discussed earlier, it's all mediums, but as long as you know what the story is, the medium has is is a small aspect of it. As long as you can understand the story, like do you know the underlying reason behind why you want to tell the story, then you're sorted.
So my next question will be related to multimedia journalism. So what are the key skills one should have?
um, you mean in order to be a multimedia journalist? So like I said, one of the key skills is to be able to know the story. And then, I mean, that famous photograph on Facebook where you had a monkey hold a DSLR and it was shared a lot. This was around the time when DSLRs were a big deal and you had your Canon 550Ds and stuff like that. So it's essentially that. I mean, if it is just about the technology, that you will learn on the job. But what you really need to know is that critical thinking lens. Like, do you have it? Do you know when to turn it on? Do you know when exactly you want to extract all that you've learned about that issue and then put it out on the table? So I feel like story is key to it all, and it's very easy. I mean, anybody. There are preteens now who have cameras, preteens who will teach you where lighting should go and what is audio and whatever. Like the tech bit is very simple, or at least it's simpler than it used to be.
Yes. So, Raksha, let's go to your next round. That is a personal, and let's understand Raksha as a person.
It's so interesting. Why did you think of including the personal round? Now I'm thinking of.
Okay. Okay. So our coffee conversation format is into two parts. The main two parts. That is because this is your first part is your professional journey.
Yeah.
Then second part, know Raksha as a person.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's why.
Let's see what it has.
So we are not doing an interview.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation. So we need to know
Who you're
both.
talking to. Yeah.
Both part.
Makes
Your
sense.
professional journey as well as you as a person.
Sure.
So let's begin. How? Tell us something about your family and your formative years.
So I grew up in Bangalore, and I come from a big family, very close knit, or at least more close knit than most families are today. And to give you a glimpse, we have like some 15 family groups. So each one has few members in one or the other. I also grew up in a family that has a lot of extremely strong-willed women, which is, I think, a great environment to grow up in. My father was the kind of person who would basically ensure that I was provided with the support, and then he would just let it be. Like he would take a step back. But a lot of these critical questions on gender, on your role in the society, a lot of those things, I think my mother kind of, you know, it, completely unknowingly put into me and my sister. So I have a younger sister, and so I think that has been like a crucial bit of my upbringing. Like my grandmother was a very strong woman with, you know, ideas of her own, and the time period we are talking about in Indian society, in conservative societies, it's not easy for women like that to be, you know, driving the family forward. But they did. So many of them did. My aunts did, and they still do. They constantly question our choices. They constantly keep us on our toes. They constantly keep us grounded. So I guess like a lot of women in my family have
Wow.
contributed to that.
Okay. So let's go back to your college life. What memories do you have from that period?
You know, I was a very boring student. I had 100% attendance. I
Mhm.
studied in Delhi, by the way. I'm a Delhi University graduate, and I had 100% attendance. I did turn all my assignments in on time. I was the president of the debating society 2 years. So all my life went into debates, preparing for debates. And DU debating scene is cutthroat. It's modeled on the Oxbridge, you know, at least back then it used to be on the Oxford Cambridge models, where you have it's back then used to be called the parliamentary debate.
Mhm.
Absolutely cutthroat. Like I, you know, you're 18 and you're asked to debate denuclearization of the country, and you have no clue what that means. You know, so a lot of my time was spent in libraries. The librarian was one of my best friends. She used to, you know, sometimes, and as students, it's not like you have a lot of money. She used to Delhi winters back then were very severe, so she would just come and give me tea when I'm like reading in the library. So my 3 years of my undergrad were very. I think I was a very studious, very curious. I used to edit my college magazine. Again, I did that 2 years in a row. So it was all about getting copies of from people, editing it, sending it to publishers. It was just, I don't remember a time when I just hung out with friends, which is kind of sad now that you look at it. I did a lot of that in my post graduation though.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So, how do you unwind after a busy day of reporting?
How do I unwind? So my partner is a screenwriter. He's a complete like Bollywood boy. And so we watch a lot of content. A lot. Like he digs up stuff from wherever. Like sometimes I don't even know where he finds access to all of this, so he digs up stuff. We watch a lot of shows. There are times when I'm coming back from, I remember this distinctly. I don't know even if people from Bombay know Malwani near Malad. Like there is a massive colony which is a waste pickers colony, um, primarily, and it's changing now, but it's primarily a waste because colony had gone there during monsoons, and I was like completely you know, submerged in dirt, and I'd heard their stories, and I was really impacted by it, and I did not know what to do. I remember like calling him and saying I want to watch something completely slapstick, which has no relation to, basically you should be able to switch off your brain. So we do a lot of that. My family loves to play board games, so we do board games, we do carom, we do a lot of cards. We all love to go out and eat chaat, so there's a lot of that happening more often than it should, but it does.
Wow. So, besides journalism or reporting, what are your other creative pursuits?
I'm not a very creative person, I think. I write a lot of fiction. This is
Mhm.
something Amir had shared with, you know, the group that we commonly know
Hmm.
in Bombay, and those guys have been great. Like there's been so much support I get from this book club that we both are a part of. So I write a lot of fiction. So that is, and that's something I enjoy doing. I've written, you know, a whole host of stories that I've published, but also a lot of stories that I have not published yet. So I feel like that is my like peak creative work, which is not included in, which is not necessarily professional work. But otherwise, I'm not, not a very. I don't sit with a paintbrush, for instance. Like that's not my thing.
Okay. Okay. So how do you keep yourself updated with different trends happening in multimedia journalism and social journalism?
I think it's you just get to know. It's a very small community. Everybody knows what is happening. You are a part of 100 different groups on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, X, and WhatsApp, and Instagram. Recently, they've started sharing it more often. You just know. So people in the industry know you, and you know people in the industry, and it just happens to be like a, you know what everybody is working on. The advantage is that it's a very small circle. The minute the circle expands, then we need to figure out ways of keeping ourselves updated. Right now it's just like I can name, you can tell me the name of a person who works in the English language. Chances are I'll tell you what that person has done last. It's pretty easy.
Mhm. That's impressive. So now, Raksha, from your bucket list, what would like to do in this 6 months of 2024?
Am I allowed to say this? Maybe not. Actually, I'm doing something which I'm not allowed to talk about.
It's up to you.
There is an NDA, but
Okay.
so that was totally on my bucket list. What I would love to do is, we've been talking about taking longish staycations. It's never happened. In the last 6 years, my partner and I have, we've literally plotted this out and said this date it just doesn't work. So that's something I would love to do, where you go, we both write, so for us to be able to go to a place where you just don't think about the world and just concentrate on writing is something we'd love to do. But
So, like, which place?
far cry. um we came across this place in Saputara, on the Maharashtra Gujarat border, which
Mhm.
is it's surrounded by forests. It's away from the highway. You just drive in there and then you forget the world. We also came across several places. We have friends who live in Goa. We came across several places on the other side of Goa, the side of Goa where it's more forest and river than there is ocean. Again, similar places where you're cut off from the world. But no, that hasn't happened. A friend of mine owns a homestay in Himachal, and you know, she has been inviting us over. Again, hasn't happened, but hopefully that.
So I pray it happens in this year.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think we really need that.
Yes, I can see that.
We need that.
So now my last question for you. Describe Raksha in one line.
I think keeps going. Yeah, it's it's so difficult to continue being a journalist in these times. So I guess keeps going would be it.
Wow.
2 words. How's that?
It's cool. So let's go to the fun round. That's a rapid fire. So you have to be your answers have to be very
I'll
quickly, funnily, and wittily.
I'll try. I'll try to not make
Okay.
it pressured.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
So let's raise
Are you a tea person too?
more towards coffee because it's a coffee conversation.
Right.
So I can't have be favorable to coffee.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I like coffee, but tea is, if given a choice, tea is my thing.
Okay. Mm, uh, your favorite city to report from?
I don't know. I think Delhi.
Okay.
I think Delhi because I have a soft corner. It's a place I grew up in.
Oh, wow. Your favorite food dish?
Oh, everything within the broader umbrella of chart. Anything you can name it chart and give it to me and I'll eat it.
Wow. Your favorite movie?
Again, like there are a zillion movies. I don't know which one to pick. So I'll tell you, this is not necessarily rapid fire, but I'll tell you something interesting. We have a wall when we moved into the house that we now live in. We have a wall, and that was the only bit. That was the first thing we furnished, where we took 16 frames and we had, like, my partner and I had this conversation as to which movie posters will go on those frames. And we had there was a lot of back and forth, and now we have 16 favorite films, so I can't really name one.
Interesting.
The wall is very famous. People come to just.
Okay, I should also come.
You should. You definitely should.
Yes. Okay. Uh, one thing, one motivational line you have heard.
I don't. Is it sad that I can't remember a single motivational line? I know that. I mean, the thing that's coming to my mind is last night, my partner said, "Feel less guilty," and that kind of is the thing for every bit of my life, because I'm like feeling guilty about not doing a good enough story. The last story I reported on was child marriages, and I'm like just feeling so guilty about all these women who had to marry when they were 3 years old, and and he was just like, feel less guilty. Am I less guilty that you're not there for a family member when the family member is in the hospital, or when you're not there for your sister or whatever. So I feel like that's a bit motivational. But I can't think of,
It's a
there's so many,
beautiful
like,
line. It's a beautiful line.
I I hope so. Like, I don't know if you expected like a Dalai Lama quote, but it's just not coming to my head.
It's your thing. How
Yeah.
can I do? See, in our Coffee Corner show, we give liberty to the speaker to
Yeah.
express their views, feelings, whatever comes to, and recap, relive, and enjoy.
Nice.
Okay. Fiction or non-fiction book?
Fiction, any day.
Which one?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I'm reading Elena Ferrante right now, so maybe I'll take her name. But my favorite Indian fiction author has been Amitav Ghosh.
Wow. So you did good,
Thank you.
and you get to win this book.
Oh, wow.
Do go through, and
Niches to riches.
yes. So you
Thank
have
you.
established your niche in social journalism.
Thank you.
So friends,
Oh, this is very nice.
it was a lovely conversation which we had with Raksha on social journalism and also understanding multimedia journalism. I'd like to thank Swapbook community for bringing us together, and special thanks to Praveen, the founder. So do watch this episode when it's published on the Coffee Conversation Show, where we have over 150 plus episodes. If you want to be a guest speaker, visit our website, theemergingindiaforum.com, fill in the form, and a team will contact you. Stay tuned, click on the bell icon. You'll get lots of interesting conversation. And if you want to be a social journalism, this episode is the go-to, where you get to get a lot of insights from Raksha. She is young but a dynamite. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe and be happy. Enjoy your weekend.